Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. It seems like living paycheck to paycheck has become the norm for so many people these days. Currently, 61% of consumers say they are living paycheck to paycheck. And we see the pinch on individuals' wallets as we look at the falling savings rates and the increasing credit card debt. But I am always reminded to take these paycheck to paycheck stats with a grain of salt, because if you dig a little deeper on these percentages, you often find that there's many people who include themselves in this paycheck to paycheck category while still contributing a fairly hefty sum to, say, their 401k, other investments, maybe their IRA. And they say after they make these contributions, they have little to nothing left. Now, how you define paycheck to paycheck is totally up to you, and you can define it on a personal level. My husband and I actually disagree on this point. I think living paycheck to paycheck is pretty much covering the essential expenses, and that's it. After those essential expenses are covered, there's little to nothing left. Maybe a little bit goes towards savings or a little bit towards investments, but there's not really much left after expenses. My husband, on the other hand, said he agrees with the people who say they contribute to their 401k, even if it is a fairly hefty sum, but if there's nothing left after those contributions, they could still be living paycheck to paycheck. And his reasoning is that the percentage that you contribute to these employer-sponsored retirement plans isn't really something you can change on a dime. So in that way, you're kind of locked in. How do you define it? You're welcome to give me your opinion down below. Either way, I still see it as a very different situation than someone who is truly living paycheck to paycheck. The same distortion happens when we look at savings rates. Many people who report their savings rate on their disposable income actually do so after any contributions for employer-sponsored plans have already been taken out. So this can actually artificially reduce the savings rate that gets reported. That's how we can simultaneously end up with a report saying that 401k savings have hit all-time record highs, followed by another report that says personal savings rate has hit record low levels. So while the exact percentages of people who are living paycheck to paycheck or the exact savings percentages that get reported might not be 100% reliable, it's safe to say that there's far more people who are living paycheck to paycheck than those who are not. And there's far more people who are saving less than they should be than those who are saving way more than the recommended amount. That's why almost 3/4 of Americans currently say they don't feel financially secure. And almost a full quarter say that they'll never feel financially secure. And simply having a higher income or a higher net worth doesn't seem to make you immune to this problem, as almost 50% of people earning $100,000 report living paycheck to paycheck. And even millionaires report feeling financially insecure. So what gives? Is it just that living paycheck to paycheck has to be a way of life? Well, let's look at the typical American. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the typical American brings home about $3,300 a month after taxes and benefits. Then we can consider the median rent of about $2,000 or the median mortgage of a little less than $2,000, as well as what the typical American spends on food each month, about $700. And we can see that food and shelter alone take up 80% of this typical individual's budget. It's practically impossible to make numbers like that work, and that's not considering any other essential expenses. Think medical or debt, you name it, or any level of wants or any level of savings. The situation certainly does get better if you have a 2-income earning household, but these numbers, specifically for individual earners, are very hard to make work. Consider that one of the more popular budgeting tactics, the 50-30-20 budget, recommends that 50% of your paycheck be directed towards needs, 30% directed towards wants, and 20% towards savings and debt repayment. This means for the typical wage earner following the 50-30-20 budget, the categories would look more like this. Needs would account for about $1,700, wants about $1,000, and savings and debt repayment about $660. In an ideal world, these numbers would work, but depending on where you live, getting your housing and other essential expenses down to this level might not be entirely possible. That's probably why, with the typical family earning about $71,000 a year, most families say they actually need something closer to $85,000 a year to comfortably get by, and why so many people report living paycheck to paycheck, and why it's so hard to stop. Wages haven't kept up with inflation. Inflation hit a 4-decade high last year, hitting over 9%. And while wages are increasing, they're not increasing at nearly the rate of inflation, which means your paycheck may be getting larger, but it still doesn't go as far. And in areas like housing or food, they've increased at rates that far outpace inflation. So a lot of times it can feel like you're spinning your wheels, but not really making progress. And if this is your situation, you may be at the point where you very well may have to find a way to increase your income. Maybe that is finding a job with better pay. Maybe it's getting some gig work or some side work. Or if you live alone and have the means to do so, maybe you could rent out a spare room in your home. There's really no one right way to boost your income. But if you find yourself in this situation where you can't meet your expenses, this very well may be what you have to do. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about budgeting here, so write up a budget, track your expenses. It's very hard to improve what you can't measure. So put a pen to paper, create an Excel spreadsheet, use an app, whatever method works for you, that's a great method. Do what you gotta do to get to know your numbers. Increasing costs of debt. The typical American carries multiple forms of debt. Usually a mortgage, perhaps an auto loan, and in many cases, consumer debt, like a credit card. And with the interest rates increasing, it means debt is getting more expensive. Mortgages are more expensive, auto loans are more expensive, and credit card interest rates now hover around 20% these days, many approaching closer to 28 or 29%. And what about student loans? Interest just resumed as of September 1st, and payments start back up as of October 1st. For some 43 million Americans, their monthly debt burden just got bigger. As your debt burden becomes larger, it takes up a larger portion of your paycheck and makes it harder to do pretty much anything else, whether that is put money towards essential expenses, your wants, or even contribute towards your savings for your future. So the quicker you can get rid of your unnecessary debt burdens, the better, because it frees up more of your paycheck for you to work with. It's so easy to kind of just let things happen. We work a handful of years, capture a few pay raises along the way, and all of a sudden we find ourselves living in a nicer place or driving a nicer car and wearing nicer clothes. It's like our lifestyle just expanded to fill our budget. When we started out in the labor market, it took every ounce of our $40,000 a year paycheck to make ends meet. But now, a handful of years down the road, living in a house that perhaps makes double that, we still find ourselves spending every single penny of that paycheck. And this just sort of happens if we don't pay attention to things over time. If we don't make it a point to pay ourselves first. If we don't make it a point to set up that automatic contribution towards savings and investments. If we don't make it a point to increase our savings rate over time. If we don't sit down and actually create a new budget when we get a new higher paycheck. If we just sit back and let life happen to us, financially speaking, life will probably ask for all of your paycheck and then some. We simply swipe our card or we sign up for that bill thinking, I can afford it, I've got the money in my account. A better plan is to be intentional with your finances. Actively and proactively make decisions today that will lead you to a better tomorrow. Redefining essentials. While many of the other factors that contribute to people living paycheck to paycheck are external and outside of their control, this one comes down to personal behavior, and I feel like over time, we've redefined what essential expenses are. This could be simply having multiple streaming services, or home decor, or taking a vacation, or meeting up with friends for cocktails, whatever it may be. But these things aren't truly essential expenses. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to spend your money with whatever you want to spend your money on. But if your budget is running super tight and you're truly living paycheck to paycheck, that's the time to know what are truly essential expenses. Because when you have absolutely no wiggle room in your budget and you splurge on these little luxuries anyway, you end up driving yourself into debt. It may feel good today, but you're just robbing from your future self. I truly think no matter what your income is, you can find a way to take control of your financial life. Not to say it's going to be easy, but if you're willing to make some sacrifices today, you can build a better financial tomorrow. What are your thoughts? Share them in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye.